Hello and welcome to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we celebrate films we think might be underrated, underappreciated, or we just wanted to talk about them. I'm the host for this week, Josh, and I'm joined as ever by Alice. Alice, say hello to the lovely people.
Hello, lovely people. How are you all doing? How are you doing, Josh?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm not too bad. I'm very excited because we've got another brilliant guest for this week. She is a writer, she's a podcaster, she's a cat lover. She also loves Keanu Reeves and Grease 2 and all that. We are joined by Em at Verbal Diorama. Em, how are you?
Hi, that is literally the perfect way I've ever been described, ever. You've basically summarised me exactly as I wish to be summarised.
That would be like on your gravestone.
Absolutely.
Podcaster, writer.
Yeah. I mean, not that anyone's wishing me dead, but...
No.
Yeah, no. Josh, don't make it weird.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that was perfect. Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm so delighted to be here.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We've already got so much in common, but we're not here to talk about Grease 2 and Keanu Reeves. We will talk about other things.
We'll do a special, and I just won't be there for that. Okay, so we always start with a completely random question when we have a guest. I'll go to Alice first, and then I'll come to you, Em. Alice, simple one this week. Simple question, difficult answer. What's the best chocolate bar?
Gotta say a double decker. I do love a double decker. It's got everything. You've got the chocolate, you've got the biscuit, you've got the nougat, and sometimes now you get like a duo decker, so you're getting like even more decker. Love a double decker, but also
a dinky decker.
Dinky decker. Love a dinky decker.
Dinky decker.
But yeah, love a boost. I love the more decadent ones because it's like if I'm having a chocolate bar, I want to go all out and have the chocolate bar with the highest calorie count.
I'm just not bothered on a double decker, Alice. I'm sorry.
No. Oh, you're going to say something like Kit Kat or something on you, or like a Twix?
No,
like
I'm not going to say Kit Kat. No, I'm not going to say Kit Kat. Kit Kat Chunky. No. Right. So, double decker or boost? Which is it out of those two?
Probably double decker. Boost gives me fuzzy teeth a little bit because it's so high sugar.
There's so much sugar in a boost, isn't there? It's like marathon running chocolate.
Yeah, you feel it afterwards.
It's like, yeah. Em, what about you? Are you a chocolate lover?
Sorry. Can I just say, boosts are excellent. I haven't had a boost in so long. So much so I feel like I want to go to the shop after we record just to get a boost.
Oh, yeah. I think they do a duo boost as well, which is like even more boost.
So do you mean a duo boost where it's like the Snickers duo where it's two?
Yeah,
so there's
two.
Double
so
ones.
the individual bars are a little bit smaller than the full-size bar, but there's two of them. So you're looking at about 900 calories per duo bar. But yeah, delicious.
I know, but they taste amazing.
Oh, they're so good. So good.
I must admit, I'm not the biggest fan of the double decker. I didn't even know dinky deckers even existed. I'm clearly out of the loop with double decker lore.
Yeah, they're in miniature heroes, aren't they?
Right.
Maybe.
So you get dinky deckers, and then they do the mini crunchy with bits.
Oh yeah, that's also good.
in the miniature heroes.
The thing is, I feel a bit weird now because Alice, you just kind of took the mickey out of the chocolate that I'm going to suggest.
I thought this was a risk. This was a risk when I said it. Is
it
a Kit Kat or a Twix?
Well, it's actually a Kit Kat Chunky.
No, Kit Kat Chunky is an excellent.
I will have a Kit Kat Chunky.
We bring a guest on, Alice, and you rip their chocolate choice.
It's rude.
I should have
told you. I should have been like, I'm going to be choosing Kit Kat Chunky, Alice. Yeah. Do not say anything bad about Kit Kats. God damn you. No, the thing about Kit Kat Chunky is, Kit Kats on their own are fine, but they're really small. Mm-hmm. So it's like you can demolish a normal size, I'm talking like 4-finger Kit Kat. Don't even bother with a 2-finger Kit Kat because it's not even worth it.
Don't come at me with 2 fingers, lads.
Don't bring me your packed lunch Kit Kat.
This is the potential to go a bit innuendo, but don't give me 2 fingers.
No, don't do it.
Give me 4 fingers if you're going to give me any fingers, right?
Jesus Christ.
But Kit Kat Chunky is obviously, it's only the 1 finger, let's be fair, but it's huge. It's got girth. It's got girth, it's got length, and also the amount of chocolate is there's loads. It's like really thick chocolate around your extra large Kit Kat base. And I do enjoy a Kit Kat Chunky, just a normal one, but I also like a peanut butter Kit Kat Chunky.
Oh yeah.
As well.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to talking about this week's film, which is one that Em has chosen, which is the Brady Bunch movie from 1995. So, spoiler warnings if you've not seen a film from nearly 30 years ago. Em, as we said, you picked this one. So, tell us what it's about and tell us why did you pick it?
Okay, well, the Brady Bunch movie. So it's the story of a lovely lady who was bringing up three very lovely girls. All of them had hair of gold like their mother, the youngest one in curls. It's the story of a man named Brady who was busy with three boys of his own. They were four men living together, yet they were all alone. Till one day, the lady met this fellow, and they knew it was much more than a hunch, that this group must somehow form a family. And that's the way they all became the Brady Bunch. And they have to pay a sudden $20,000 tax bill or risk losing their homes. So it's basically a film about them raising $20,000 to pay a tax bill that comes out of nowhere. and that's it.
That was
and
beautiful.
why did I pick this? Well, it was one of those. It just kind of came to me when you said, "Well, what do you want to cover?" And I sent, I think I sent about 5
Yes, you did,
different
sent a couple.
options through, and this one just kind of really stood out, I guess, because firstly, I don't think there are many podcasts that actually talk about the Brady Bunch movie.
No.
And therefore, I kind of feel like it might possibly be a little bit underseen because maybe not a lot of people have seen it to talk about it. And also, I feel like it is actually quite underrated because I always laugh at this movie. And I don't know if maybe that's just my sense of humour. But it's just really sweet and kind of a bit naive, actually. But I really like that. Everyone seems really perfectly cast as well, especially if you compare the look of like the original series, which I never saw, by the way. I don't have any connection to the original series. This was literally something that I just saw one day and I just thought, this is really funny. I really like this. And yeah, it's like, well, your podcast is all about stuff that's underseen, underrated. And I was like, I don't think there's anything in this country more underseen and underrated than something like the Brady Bunch movie. It's, I don't know.
Probably, I think you've probably got a good point there. It's
There's a
certainly not
sound
well.
argument, yeah.
Well, I hadn't seen it before. I had heard of it and I was familiar with the Brady Bunch, but the only reason I was familiar with it is through reference in other American TV.
Yeah.
So obviously it's a classic American. It's probably, I was thinking whilst I was watching it and trying to prep for this, I was thinking, what is the equivalent of this, in this country? It's probably something like Faulty Towers or Only Fools and Horses, maybe Dad's Army, the classic sitcom that sort of really influenced everything that came after it. So you probably would say, I don't know, what would you say, Alice? Had you seen it before?
No, I hadn't seen it. I'd sort of heard of the Brady Bunch, hadn't ever seen that, didn't really know what it was about. But again, like you said, Josh, kind of familiar with it through pop culture references. So I think they talk about it a lot in Family Guy.
Family Guy is the big
maybe they
one.
mention it in like Friends and The Simpsons and stuff like that. So I'd drawn like little bits of information that it seemed like this twee, quite wholesome show about this family basically. But other than that, I didn't know anything about it. I'd never seen the show, didn't realize that there then was a movie. I'm very surprised that you hadn't seen the show, Em, because in my mind it was like, oh, she must have loved the show and then that's why she's picked the film.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Never seen an episode of it.
So if you hadn't seen the show, I'm interested, how did you come to find it? Or is it one of those where you just stumbled across it one day?
I literally just stumbled across it. I think I do remember seeing the trailers for it when I was a kid. Because I remember it there was definitely a trailer out there. It must have been before another movie that I watched or something like that. And I literally just came across it one day. It might have actually been at like the video rentals place or something like that. And yeah, it's not something that I would say that I watch religiously. I probably only seen it maybe 2 or 3 times in my life. But it's just such a wonderful parody of all of those like American sitcoms where you've got these, these situations with families, but it's all okay at the end of the episode and there's always like a moral story, and it's very much like that. And the fact it pays homage to its source material and it parodies it as well. Which is kind of really apparent, even if you've not seen the show and you're not familiar with the show. But it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of become a little bit pop culture. And I remember when I said, we talked about me doing this, and I said I wanted to get a Sure Jan in. Now, Sure Jan is like, it's become a meme, sort of, in the last like 10 years or so. The whole like Sure Jan. And that's actually in the sequel. And I completely forgot it was in the sequel because I thought it was in this one. But Sure Jan has become it's become a thing. And no one really is fully aware that Sure Jan kind of comes from it's a very Brady sequel, but it's the sequel to the Brady Bunch movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's an actual meme for this franchise, which is quite crazy, really, if you think, well, no one's really seen this movie. How is there a meme for this franchise?
It's sometimes that in this day and age, that can be a test of durability, can't it? When something becomes a meme or something becomes memorable, and it becomes so memorable for one thing that even people forget where the source materials come from.
Yeah,
it's just that's that is it's like all the different memes and gifs that we're all aware of. They all come from somewhere, and that's the thing. And that's one of the things I like about it. Back to what you said there was the way it pays homage and parodies the sitcom that it's from and general sitcoms in general, because it does that thing where they keep going to wrap it up. It's like they're all stood around, and then because every episode would be at the end, the dad wraps it up, and it's all like, "Oh well, we're all back here, and it's all fine." And then one of them makes a joke.
Something today.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Exactly.
and then they also go, and then the credits are supposed to go. Except that happens about 3 times in this film, and obviously it's not finishing, and it's almost like they've taken them out of the sitcom and put them in the real world, and that's the real, I think, genius of the film is that, as well as things like. Because I had to Google it because I've never seen the show, but I'm pretty sure they've written this and directed this as if they think there's a laugh track. So it's as if the dialogue is as if the characters think there's a laugh track, but there isn't one. So characters will say stuff and then there's just like a pause. And that's gotta be on purpose. That's not like a mistake, is it? It's got to be a purposeful, we'll make it like it is a sitcom, except everything around them is normal.
Yeah.
So that's the real genius of the film. So overall, I mean, I'll come to Alice now, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great fun. What did you think, Alice?
Yep, I really enjoyed it so much more than I thought I would. It wasn't that I had low expectations. I think I just had no expectations. Like I didn't know what to kind of assume or what kind of expectations to have. But I knew because you'd picked it, Em, and you're obviously a big film person, I knew that there must be something to it. So even though on the surface it looks like this, very, quite saccharine, quite simple story in this very simple world, I was like, nah, there's got to be more to this because there's no way Em would have just pick this for no reason. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. You've both mentioned there about it being a parody, and I was kind of unsure for a bit. I was like, is this a parody or is it just really like this? But then of course, because it's from 1995, of course it's a parody. Like if it was from maybe the 70s or early 80s, you'd be like, oh no, they're being genuine. They want people to really, appreciate these characters for what they are. There's no tongue in cheek. There's no kind of undertones or anything. But with this, I feel like there was a lot going on under the surface, but there was so much to enjoy. But the main thing I think that you do just notice instantly is the aesthetic of the whole thing. Obviously, it's very vibrant. The props are vibrant in themselves. Everything is very extreme. Everyone has their own very distinct and unique hairstyle and stuff. And this reminded me a little bit of like Tim Burton filmmaking and I kind of
Edward Scissorhands or whatever.
It is a little bit, and
like
then
when they're in the houses there.
And is it Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory that Tim Burton did? So I kind of saw a bit of him in this. I thought it was really funny. I thought there was a lot of really funny moments. And you've got a really good mix of this kind of physical kind of slapstick comedy and then a really witty script. And I thought the two, they just got the balance really right. And like, it was so much funnier than I think I expected it to be.
The bit where they go to the mall and they're going down the escalator, doing the opening credits, and they're like hands on each other's shoulders, and they're popping either side of them, doing the "Think I'll go for a walk outside."
That was funny.
I was creased overlid laughing at that bit. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. So I've got here that it's like a mix of Airplane, Wayne's World, and the Addams Family films from around the same time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Where
I can see that.
And it's what I mean by that is, they take characters who exist in a world, whether that be a cartoon, a sketch, or whatever, Airplane, I think, just for the sort of slapstick comedy, but particularly Wayne's World and the Addams Family, take characters that are very lovable and endearing, and then everyone around them is cynical, and they are the odd ones, but they do a job of making you align yourself with them. And so that fish out of water is where you get the comedy in this film. Like you said, Alice, the aesthetic really works in it, because in their house, everything is so colourful and so 70s, and the hair and the clothes and all that. And then as soon as they're outside of their house, it's grey and it's brown and it's grunge. It's it's the peak of the grunge times in the 90s and that sort of thing.
Which I think is represented really well and nicely with the soundtrack. So the soundtrack just blew my mind. Like, it starts with this real like late 80s, early 90s sort of grunge song. Like, it could be Pearl Jam or it could be Nirvana. And then throughout you've got a lot of grunge music going on as these like kids are going about their day and stuff. And I was like, this is so weird. Like, it doesn't really match at all. But then it just heightens the fact that this family don't match with their surroundings.
It's the juxtaposition between this family that are literally from the 70s. Like, it's like they've been picked up in the 70s. They've been put into the 90s. They've got no idea of the realities of the world. They're totally oblivious. It's almost like aliens have crash landed on Earth and they look like the Brady Bunch. And the other thing that I love as well is that I kind of feel like, because Josh, you mentioned a load of, like Wayne's World and Police Academy and the Addams Family. And obviously all of those came from TV. So they were all based on TV shows. Yeah. And I kind of feel like there was a time, kind of, maybe sort of 90s into the 2000s, where everything, all the TV shows were being remade, because obviously we had Charlie's Angels, Starsky and Hutch, the Dukes of Hazzard, the A-Team. And, well, I kind of put Charlie's Angels separate to all of those, because I love Charlie's Angels. I think it's super fun. And I think Charlie's Angels is similarly, I think, a little bit of a parody of itself. But movies like Starsky and Hutch and the Dukes of Hazzard and the A-Team, they were very much set in their worlds doing their thing. And they were a little bit more they were comedies, but they were less self-aware comedies. Whereas the Brady Bunch, with this family that has kind of come over from the 70s, and yet the movie about them is completely self-aware. Like, it knows what it's doing, and it knows it doesn't have to explain to the audience, oh, well, the Brady Bunch, they hopped into a time machine one day and blah, 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 or whatever. Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why they're still in the 70s. It's just the pure comedy that comes out of the fact that they are stuck in the 70s, and yet they're in this grungy, rock-filled, long hair, greasy long-haired, guys with these, it's like going back to Clueless or something, with the guys with the trousers around their, ankles and stuff like that. It's all very much like that.
I think that's the way to do it, is what you're saying there, is you've got to make it self-aware. If you just try and take the concept and adapt it, it doesn't always work. Whereas if you poke fun at it and go, nothing's changed, but we know it used to be like that sort of thing. That's why this works. I think it's the same reason why the Addams Family films work. Is you've got to not take it seriously.
Yeah.
Because when you do end up with like trying to make old concepts work, or trying to drag out a concept into a full-length film that just doesn't necessarily work. There are different ways of doing it. Like you mentioned there, I quite like that the adaptation of the A-Team with Bradley Cooper and Liam Neeson in it and all that, but they don't poke fun at it. They literally just adapt it for modern times.
Exactly.
And so it still works, but then that wasn't as successful as something like this when it came out. Certainly not critically, anyway. But no, you're absolutely right. I really, really enjoyed it.
Oh, well, I'm glad that you both enjoyed it, because I was a little bit like, if they've not seen it, are they going to like it?
Well, and I thought that as well. And I was like, well, I haven't seen the show, so is this going to mean anything to me? Am I going to be able to kind of follow it or fall in love with these characters or whatever? But some of the writing is just so clever and so funny that you are with them there. And Jan is just hilarious. Like, her whole thing is hilarious. And
her
I'm a middle child.
So
So I can kind of relate, but her, her inner monologue / schizophrenia that she seems to have, and how that impacts her life. It's so, there's kind of undertones of it being quite dark, but it's
Yeah.
really funny at the same time. And it's like bringing this darkness to this otherwise very colourful landscape. And there was a bit of this like attention to detail that I really, really enjoyed. So I don't know if you noticed this, guys, but when Cindy's the name of the younger sister, isn't
Yes.
it?
Yeah,
The little
yeah.
one. So when she goes over to the neighbour's house, all the camera angles are really crooked, as if it's some kind of like weird German expressionism film to
No, I
obviously
didn't notice.
signify that like this guy, because he's the villain of the story, isn't he?
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
he's trying to get them to
Yeah.
sell their house, and all the camera angles are really crooked. And I was like, I just wasn't expecting that sort of attention to detail and that kind of level of filmmaking from something that on the surface it seems very simple and it presents itself as being quite one note and very superficial. But it's not really. Like there's layers to it and there's loads going on. I just felt really pleasantly surprised, I think.
Yeah, I loved, like you said, I loved the performance of the girl who played Jan. I think it's Jennifer Elise Cox. I think that's her name. I thought she was the standout. All the inner monologue stuff. It's just hilarious. Like
It's
stuff,
isn't
and
it?
and all
when
the faces she pulls.
she cuts her sister's hair,
Yeah.
and then, but she looks beautiful with the short hair anyway.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
but how bad is that wig? How terrible is that wig? It's like it's done on purpose. And that's what I
Yeah.
love about it. It's like they found the worst possible blonde wig to put on the stunningly beautiful Christine Taylor. And it's just so terrible. And then it's like her hair is fine. It's just yeah, I love it. I love it so much.
Did you say you say you're a middle child, aren't you, Alice? I couldn't remember if you were the middle or the youngest.
Yeah, I'm the middle one. So
What
I
about
can
you?
relate to Jan.
What about you, Em?
So I'm the oldest child. So,
So I'm the oldest child as well.
Marsha.
Yeah, yeah, I am.
You're a couple of Marshas, you two.
But my partner was watching it with me, and she is also the middle child. And I was texting my sister, who was the middle child, and obviously of our three, and she was just like, "Oh, it's just so true."
Yeah.
Like you just get ignored. I thought Michael McKean was really good in this as well, who plays the villain. I thought he played like the slimy villain really well.
Yeah, he does that well, doesn't he?
He chews the scenery and they use him sparingly where he's not in it enough, but when he is in it and he is the one who gets most of the slapsticky stuff happen to him.
Like when he gets electrocuted.
Yeah, you really love to see him. He plays it so well and so slimy. You really love to see him brought down a peg every time something happens to him. So I thought that was brilliant as well. I thought as well, and we don't often talk about this sort of thing really, because I guess neither of us have worked specifically in this role, which is the direction I thought was really good. So the way that they frame it and everything to look like a sitcom, along with all, the way it's shot. So there's a bit, isn't there, where like we've already touched on, they create this world where this is the Brady's house. It's all colourful, and when anything from outside goes into the house, it's weird. And when anything where they go outside the house, it looks weird. And there's a bit where the villain comes into the house to speak to them, and he opens the door like a guest would on a sitcom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like like when someone in Friends comes through into the apartment and everyone cheers.
Yeah.
So he opens the doors, and all he's doing is walking in, but he does it where he opens it and like peeks through it, and then walks into the house. And I just
the dad
thought,
goes, "It's open," and he's like,
Yeah.
"Of course it is."
But there's little touches like that make it look like a sitcom, which
It
is
does,
just
yeah.
adds to that meta and that self-referential thing that we've talked about. Having rewatched it again for this, is there anything else you particularly picked up on that you're like, oh, I hadn't noticed that before, or I really like that, or is it just you still love it?
I still just really love this movie. It just really makes me laugh. And it's one of those things that you kind of know the joke is coming, but it still tickles me every single time. And I just think, like you say, the physical humour is really good in this movie. You mentioned obviously the slapstick and more like a link to Airplane, in that regard. But I just really enjoy watching this. And to be honest, it's one of those that I actually bought the DVD for the purposes of this recording, because it used to be on Amazon Prime, I think.
Yeah.
And then last time I watched it, it was on Amazon Prime, and I was just flicking through and I was like, oh, I really want to watch the Brady Bunch again. But it's gone off Amazon Prime now. So I actually bought the DVD, and I kind of wish I'd bought the double box set with a Very Brady sequel, because I've not seen that one as much. But a lot of people do say that a Very Brady sequel is better.
Interesting. I mean, I love a sequel, so I'll have to check that out.
So yeah, that's something that I actually really want to revisit. with the mainly for Shaw Jan, because I love a good Shaw Jan. Shaw Jan. But yeah, I can't say I noticed anything different this time round. Like I say, I've not really watched it that many times. I wouldn't say like I'm proficient in this movie. Not like I would be in something like Grease 2, obviously.
Oh,
Mhm.
But but I just think it's so much fun. And I know I kind of said this as well, but I really do feel like this is so underrated, because a lot of people, if they saw this on a DVD shelf or on Amazon Prime, they might skip past it because they'll think, well, I've never seen the Brady Bunch, so I'm not going to get it.
I
But you
thought
don't
that. Yeah,
actually
I
need
thought
to
that.
see the Brady Bunch. Some parts of it are a little bit, there's a line where Carol Brady mentions a dog. And
Oh,
that
yeah.
apparently is going
Tiger,
back
the
to
dog,
the TV show where they had a dog for 2 seasons. I read the trivia. They had a
Yeah, I
dog for
did.
2 seasons. And basically the first dog died, and then the second dog wasn't, didn't
A
behave.
naughty doggy.
Yeah, they couldn't
Naughty
train it.
doggy.
They couldn't train it, could they?
Yeah, so they got rid of this dog, and the dog just disappeared off the show, and no one ever said anything about it. So it's like little things like that. You kind of like, well, I don't get that, but it's such a throwaway line that it actually doesn't make much, doesn't matter,
Yeah. It wasn't enough to like ruin it for me. I didn't feel
Yeah.
isolated as a viewer, that I didn't fully understand, because it's such a simple joke that you can kind of get it. It's like, oh, well, obviously that must have been a dog that they had in the TV show, but then there's no consequence to it, and it's not like it's something that they then go on about over and over again. So it's not really a big deal. So it's just like a little nod and a wink to the people who have seen the TV show. But if you haven't seen the TV show, it's cool. Like it's not a big deal.
A lot of the old, American sitcoms, if you go back to like the 50s into the 60s and 70s, sitcoms always kind of perpetuated a myth that every family is a happy family, and that parents always love each other, and that children always listen, and that, there's never any angst, and even for the slightest trouble, everything's solved at the end of the episode. It's like Alice said earlier, it's like, well, I learned something today. And, you've always got the dad who's like, now kids. One of the things I love about this movie is Mike Brady. And he's like constantly explaining about, the whole tattletale thing.
Yeah.
Don't become a tattletale, because if you tattle, then you're actually tattling on yourself, and no one wants to tattle on themselves. I'm paraphrasing because I don't know the exact quote.
I know what you mean, though. Yeah, that was good.
But Carol Brady does the same thing, in a sense that, well, Mike Brady always says about, that particular line. And then at the end of everything he says, she always says, your father's right. And then basically repeats what he's just said, which is such a sitcom thing. It is a really silly thing, but I just love that the characters, that they never break character, if you know what I mean. They're always just the Bradys, and they have these 70s sensibilities, and the whole when Marsha's with that guy in a car and she's like, we're not at the dance, and he's like, oh, I want to give you something, Marsha, and she's like, she says to Doug, you've got your hand on my shoulder, that's third base, I don't go there. And it's just so naive, and yeah, it's so brilliant, because it's Christine Taylor, I think, doesn't get enough recognition for her comedic chops, because
No,
I think a
you're
lot
right.
of people nowadays, they're just like, oh, well, I don't even think they're still married, but she was Ben Stiller's wife, so she was in a lot of Ben Stiller's comedies. And I just kind of feel like she is so much more funnier than people give her credit for. And I think she is really great because she plays it so straight in this movie. And I love that. And the other thing is the fact that Mike Brady's, all his architectural designs are exactly the same.
Yeah.
With the different logos.
Just put a different logo on. I thought that was so funny.
It's really puerile comedy if you think about it, but it really works in this setting. It wouldn't work if you put it anywhere else, but it works for the Brady Bunch. Oh, and just the other thing I really liked is that, and then this is going to sound, kind of when we're talking about having a 70s family, put into the 90s, we're talking about like, modern families and stuff. But I really love the fact that the neighborhood that they live in is a diverse neighborhood.
Yeah.
There's a white couple there, there's a black couple there, and there's a gay couple there.
Yeah.
And you think, well, 1995, having a gay couple you know, in your neighborhood, depicted on TV. Even not TV, movies. I don't think that was really a thing that happened in 1995.
Very progressive in
probably
its
is.
own
Probably quite
sort of fun
yeah.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
really
really
good.
like that.
Okay, so we'll move on then to talking about things that we perhaps didn't like about the film or that we might change about the film. I don't think Em is going to have a great, massive list for this.
No,
but
like I said, I really struggle to be objective. So my don't like list isn't very long.
yeah, I always, whenever I'm like that with a film, you know, because we can be the same. Like if we pick a film that we're really emotionally attached to, we always try and find something we don't like, and I don't think we've ever had it where both of us have gone, no, there isn't anything. I just love this film because we always try.
So for me, do you remember when we did Pop Star?
Oh,
Never
yes,
Stop,
of
Never
course.
Stopping.
It's
There
not-
was
it's
there's
not-
literally
it's not
nothing
long
about
enough.
that I don't
That
like.
was
Yeah,
it
I
was
couldn't
so
find
good.
anything.
Your
Couldn't find anything.
criticism was it's not long enough.
My criticism was it's not long enough, and that a different Lonely Island song that isn't even featured in the film doesn't have a music video. That's like I'm just furious at them for that.
But whenever we do this, and it's like I can't really think of anything I don't like, it always reminds me of that episode of The Simpsons where Homer becomes a food critic.
Yeah,
And he won't.
That
And he
is
won't.
us.
And
That
he
is
won't
us.
say anything bad about any of the restaurants. So everyone in Springfield just becomes overweight because they're
Yeah.
constantly eating at the restaurants. It just but with films. But is there anything you perhaps don't like or would change, Em? Doesn't have to be.
So there is. I get a little bit of discomfort with Mrs. Ditmeyer, especially when she her remarks to Greg and Peter Brady, you know, where she's like putting the mail into his pocket. And she says something like, "Oh, you're getting big like your daddy," or something like that. And I'm like, "Oh my God, like this guy, this is a minor. Like this is a kid. He's not even in college. So like he's 17." And then like I don't know how old all the kids are supposed to be, but I assume he's 17. So I assume that Peter Brady's maybe like a couple of years younger because he's like his voice hasn't quite broken. So there's like that scene at the
gag,
end,
isn't it? Yeah,
where his voice goes really deep, and it's brilliant. But yeah, she's really inappropriate, and that just feels really off. I suppose in like 1995, that was like considered to be quite funny. But I mean, it's Jean Smart playing Mrs. Ditmeyer, and she is fantastic. Just generally,
She's
I
good,
love
isn't
her
she?
as an actress.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of a bit doesn't really sit very well. Kind of with
because
a modern lens.
if you swap the sexes, it'd be really creepy.
Yeah, like you'd be freaked out. Yeah.
So
proper.
why is it acceptable?
Yeah,
Because he's a bloke, I
exactly.
guess is sort of what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, we've obviously mentioned about it being based on a TV show, and I do think some of the callbacks to the show, like I say, they're not always picked up if you're a non-viewer of the show.
Yes,
But I don't think that's a massive problem. Like I wouldn't say that is a reason not to watch the movie at all because it doesn't matter. But there are some little nods, I think, in there that are a little bit, you kind of don't get that unless you then go on IMDb and read the trivia.
Like the dog one.
Like the dog thing. But again, it's such a throwaway line, it doesn't actually matter.
It's not integral to the plot and it's not integral to the jokes. And I think that's where you would lose people if you kept sort of hammering home these jokes that were like, oh, if you watch the show, you'd get it. But it doesn't really do that.
Yeah. And I suppose the other thing, kind of talking about the plot, I mean, this is a very simple plot. This is literally a child could have written this plot. Yes. It's so remarkably simple. But again, it's like that kind of is in the movie's favour a little bit, because if it was more complicated, then I don't think it would be that easy to just sort of sit and watch it. If you had all these complicated arcs for all these characters, there are literally no story arcs apart from Jan loses her schizophrenic voices and they go to Cindy. But other than that, like, no one else really has a story arc at all. It's literally just, we need to find $20,000. How are we going to do that? Let's try several things. And now there's a contest, and the prize is exactly $20,000.
Yeah.
And
where's
it's
that
very
money
contrived
coming from as well?
Yeah, exactly.
Is the school paying that? Like, what?
Who knows? It's so contrived. But again, it's like, I feel like I can't not like not like the fact that it's contrived, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because it just kind of adds to its charm a little bit.
It's kind of the point, isn't it, sort of thing, that it is contrived. It's sort of, that's part of its charm, isn't it, like you say?
Yeah. So to be honest, my don't likes are really, I don't like this, but it adds to its charm. Apart from the Mrs. Dittmeyer stuff, which is creepy.
Bit creepy.
Yeah.
What about you, Alice? Anything?
So there were two things on my list, but they don't really stand up because obviously both of you have confirmed for me now that this is parody and it's poking fun of itself and it's poking fun at, these typical tropes that you would see in certain things. The main one was some of the like male gaze camera work and narrative directed at Marsha. So she's got this scene where she's walking through school in a very short skirt and everybody's staring at her, and the song like "I'm your Venus, I'm your fire, your desire," which is a very mature song about sexuality, and she is a young teenager, right? She's maybe like 16, 17 years old. And I feel like the camera really lingers on her. And a lot of the narrative is about how pretty she is and about how good looking she is. And sometimes it made me feel a bit uncomfortable. But if we're talking parody, if we're talking about something that's poking fun at the genre, then that isn't an issue, because it's saying, oh yeah, isn't it ridiculous how we sexualize schoolgirls? And isn't it ridiculous how, the camera lingers on these like young people, and especially going hand in hand with what you said about Mrs. Dittmeyer's attitude towards the two boys that live next door. Crazy. So that made me feel a bit uncomfortable, but I think it works within the genre. And the other thing was that I was just kind of unsure how to digest the whole thing, because I wasn't sure. Like, I was like, is this taking the piss, or is this meant to be a depiction of this really sort of saccharine sweet? And, have you seen Meet Me in St. Louis?
No, I haven't.
So that's kind of we did that on the podcast long time ago now, but that's everything is very much like this, but they're trying to portray it as like a genuine thing, as like, we need the audience to forget about the troubles that are happening right now, or forget about politics or whatever. We just need them to look at this beautiful, pristine white family and just think that this is the ideal and that this is the American dream. But now I feel like that the Brady Bunch movie is doing that, but it's all tongue-in-cheek, isn't it? It's all saying, look at this kind of genre, look at all these tropes, aren't they ridiculous? Here's how we can poke fun at it. So then really, I don't think there was anything I didn't like about it. When you take away those things. What about you, Josh?
There's not loads for me. There's two things, and you've both sort of touched on it already. What the first is, I wonder if you would get more out of it if you'd watched the series, if you had an attachment to the characters. And I wonder if that then informed its success, because I wonder if it wasn't obvious enough, perhaps, that it was a parody. So people felt it was a big screen adaptation, like something like the In-Betweeners movie or something like that. So people didn't know what to make of it. So maybe people didn't go if they hadn't seen the Brady Bunch TV show, because they thought it was an adaptation, when in fact it's a parody slash adaptation. It's both. It balances them really well, but I wonder if that informed actually how it was received. The other thing is, and I don't know what you make of this, is it's not even necessarily a criticism, but do you think we needed to know why they were in the 70s? Because I know why it is, because the plot dictates it needs to be, and that's the whole, aesthetic of the film, but it doesn't explain why all the characters are stuck in the 70s, but it's the 90s. Do you know what I mean? So they're all in the 70s clothes and everything in their house is 70s. It doesn't explain why they haven't moved on. It's just that they haven't, which it's obviously a personal choice. That may be a strength of the film, but do you think we'd have got more out of it if it explained why they hadn't moved on? Or do you think that's the point? Yeah.
No, I don't. I really don't. I think that's the point. It's literally just lampooning that, stupidity of a family who are living in the 90s and they're stuck in the 70s. And I kind of feel like if the movie took the time to explain that it would take away some of the magic of this really naive situation.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if the family then moves on 20 years, the kind of silly situations they find themselves in, like with the carjacking. And it's like, when the guy's like, this is a carjack. And he's like, well, thanks, but my name's not Jack. And, all of those really stupid things, like, that wouldn't work for a family that is in the 90s.
Yeah.
That knows the 90s. So it is, the fish out of water thing is, I always felt was kind of the point. that the comedy doesn't work if they're not completely unaware of being in 1995.
Yeah, as I say, it wasn't necessarily a criticism. It was something that just popped into my head. But I actually, maybe if you explained it, if you said they've time traveled or they've been frozen in time or something like that, then it would just over-egg the pudding a bit and over-explain it to the audience, when in fact not explaining it is where the comedy comes from.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it needs to be explained. I think it just is, which I know sounds really contrived anyway, just to say, well, it just is, so you just got to deal with it. But that just is how it is. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there who aren't particularly happy with the movie for that reason, that it's like, well, it doesn't explain why they're in the 90s. But I just don't think it needs to at all. I mean, what do you think, Alice?
That had never even crossed my mind. I honestly hadn't even thought about it. So for me, I didn't feel like that. I just don't think it was really missing anything. I think the way it was constructed, the lack of explanation about it is why it's funny. And you just kind of believe that this family, they just are the way that they are. And you just kind of accept it for face value. But no, I personally didn't feel like I needed more explanation. But I think some people, some cinema goers may feel that way, and you would have questions, I suppose. But I just didn't have those questions, and it didn't ruin the enjoyment for me at all.
Okay, so we'll move on then to talking about the critical reception, and then we'll try and conclude as to whether it is underrated, underseen, etc. So, how do you think it did, Alice?
Oh, well, I feel like because M feels that it is underrated, it probably didn't do as well as what I would give it. I would easily throw it into like the mid-7s. I thought there was a lot to enjoy there. It was really funny. So much effort has gone into the mise-en-scène, into the script writing and finding those really witty moments. But I do wonder if you haven't seen the Brady Bunch, you just wouldn't click with it, even though I did, but I feel like you wouldn't choose to watch it. So I wonder if it just maybe hasn't grabbed the audience that it potentially could have done. I don't know. I feel like maybe it didn't do really well, like at all. I wonder if maybe it got like a 5.
Ooh,
or like
five.
a 5.5. I'll go with a 5. I don't know. I'm so interested to know what the critics thought of it, because I feel like this could swing either way.
Do you know how it did, Em? Have you looked it up, or do you not know?
I know how it did financially.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I don't really know how it did critically. I didn't really look into critics. I just saw that there was some financial information on the Wikipedia.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's have a look then. So, at the time of recording on IMDb, it gets 6.1 out of 10. On Rotten Tomatoes, at the time of recording, the critics give it 63%.
Okay, a bit more generous than I thought.
And the audience give it 47%.
Oh,
what?
So for me, I mean,
atrocious.
I think even 63
They didn't get it.
is.
They didn't get it.
I think
the audience didn't get it, clearly.
But I think even
my
the critics,
God.
I think even 63, I think this is a solid 7 and above.
I think it's a solid
film.
7 and a bit. Yeah, like a
So,
7.3.
Give it 7.5.
Easy underrated for me. What about you guys? What about you, Em? Underrated?
Absolutely underrated.
Yeah.
100% underrated.
Yeah, Alice?
Yeah, I would say that's underrated, and I would definitely say it's underseen. I think you said it before, no one is out there scrolling Amazon, Netflix now, whatever it might be, and seeing this and going, oh yeah, that's the film for me. And I never would have seen it, never would have heard of it if it wasn't for you coming on the podcast. So yeah, I think underrated and underseen.
What did you see financially, Em, out of interest?
So I saw the figures that it did in America, and then I saw the figures that it did overseas. Because, I suppose this is one of those that it is an American sitcom, so kind of makes sense it would do better.
Yeah.
In America. And also kind of makes sense it wouldn't perhaps do so well in a country like here. I don't think the UK's ever had like the Brady Bunch on syndication. Like, back in the day when, Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie and all of those kind of sitcoms would be on TV here. I don't think the Brady Bunch has ever been on TV here.
No,
That's
no,
interesting.
no,
Yeah. When
I
you
can't
think that
remember ever
things
seeing
like
it.
Cheers and Frasier and that was just on a
Exactly.
loop. I think Frasier's
Yeah.
still on Channel 4 every
Well,
morning.
yeah, you think of something like Friends. I mean, that's like
Yeah.
universal. Pretty much everyone in the world knows what Friends is. But I genuinely, and I might be proven wrong. Someone might say, actually, it was on Channel 4 in
Oh, there you
1986
go. Yeah,
or
we might
whatever.
be wrong.
But as far as I'm aware, the Brady Bunch was never on TV here. So kind of makes sense that no one would watch something called the Brady Bunch movie if they didn't know that the Brady Bunch was a thing. So yeah, I know that it did well. Oh no, Josh, why didn't you tell us?
So I don't know. So I don't know how it did financially, but I think we've hit the nail on the head there, which is that it didn't. Neither me or Alice had seen it before, which is usually a good indication that something's underseen, and ultimately it's definitely underrated. So are we saying what do we think? Conclusion: underrated and underseen.
Both. Double
Yes.
whammy.
The double-
in both piles.
The double whammy.
Absolutely.
There we go. Well, thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. And to be honest, I didn't know that neither of you had seen this movie. So because you didn't tell me that you hadn't seen it beforehand.
We don't.
But I'm delighted that not that I'm delighted that you hadn't seen it. That sounds wrong. But I'm delighted that you both actually really enjoyed it, because there was always a bit of a fear there that if you hadn't seen it, then maybe one or both of you would be like, nah, it's really crap. But
I was worried
yeah.
about that as well. I was like, imagine we've got Em to come on after all this time, and it's still like, oh, this is shit. This. But no,
Oh my
didn't feel
God,
that
what
way.
has she made us watch? This is the biggest pile of shit ever. How are we going
I
to tell
had
her?
faith. I have faith in your taste.
So, where do the listeners find your stuff? Where can they get hold of your stuff?
Well, you can get hold of my podcast if you wish. So, Verbal Diorama is basically the podcast all about the history and legacy of movies you know and movies you don't. So, I basically take a look into film history, how something was made, basically, because I'm fascinated about how movies were made. I haven't done an episode on the Brady Bunch movie.
Ooh.
And to be
There
honest,
you
I had a
go.
quick look, and there's not actually that much information out there about how they made the Brady
Ah.
Bunch movie. But that's not to say it won't make an appearance at some point in the future, because, as you've probably gathered, I really enjoyed this movie, and I really do think it deserves more eyes/ears on it. And I really hope, actually, that people listening to this, that maybe if they do see a copy of the Brady Bunch movie and they go, on their streaming site or DVD rentals or whatever. Rentals, they don't even exist anymore. What am I
DVD
talking about?
rentals.
I don't think I
Oh
do.
my God,
no.
I'm so old.
Go to your
Check
local
it out
blockbuster.
in your DVD rental.
Stop at Woolworths on the way home. Get some pick and mix.
Actually, I like our price. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to say DVD rental.
DVD
I
rental.
Okay, I'm guessing you're going to keep all this in to embarrass me.
Hell
But,
yeah.
Always.
But anyway, as I was saying about my podcast, not about DVD rentals, I do hope that people do, if they find this movie, they do give it a chance, because it is absolutely worth it. And yeah, if people want to find me, they can find me on all of your podcast apps of choice if you're interested in film history and whatnot. You can also find me on social media. Come and chat to me about the Brady Bunch movie. I am at Verbal Diorama on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And I also write for Film Stories as well. So there you go. I do all sorts. I podcast, I write. I love Grease 2 and Keanu Reeves, as Josh basically said at the start. So if you want to talk to me about any of those, hit me up on Twitter.
So there we go. The Brady Bunch movie, underrated and underseen. The rare double whammy. Slide them into the vault, Alice.
There it goes. Real worthy
A
of that. I
worthy
reckon.
contender.
A cracking film.
Thank you very much to Em for coming on. We
Yes,
will be
thank
back in your ears with another episode next week. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com, and we're on all the usual social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Just search for Just Films and That. And we're also on your television sets, aren't we, Alice?
We are indeed. So every Friday from 6 p.m, you can find us on the local TV network. So if you live in Bristol, Birmingham, Leeds, Liverpool, or the northeast of England, you can find us on Channel 7 on Freeview. Or if you live in North or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. We're also on Sky on Channel 195. That's every Friday from 6 p.m, and sometimes Mondays as well.
Yes, there we go. So we will be back in your ears with a new episode next week. Alice Oliver, thank you for joining me.
Pleasure as always, Josh, and thank you.
It's goodbye from me. Cheerio.
Bye.